I'm Julie Zenner along with Dennis Anderson, and here's what's coming up on Almanac North.
It's all about the upcoming Duluth city election tonight as the 4 candidates running for 2 open at-large city council seats are here.
We'll sit them down for an Almanac North forum on the issues in the campaign and why they want to help lead the city.
And we'll have the latest business headlines and find out what was making news around here 25 years ago.
That's all coming up next on Almanac North. Hello and welcome to Almanac North. Thanks for watching. Denny, there are lots of candidates and lots of issues in the upcoming Duluth city election.
Absolutely. You know, there's a lot to get excited about, too, in all the elections coming up. And tonight I think we're going to give the audience a look at what's behind some of the candidates and why they want to run and what they stand for.
That's right. We have 4 of them here,
Yep.
so if you could introduce them, that'd be great.
All right, Julie. Thank you very much. There will be some new faces on the Duluth City Council in 2016, as several current councilors are not running for re-election. Now, the field is wide open in the at-large council races, where 4 candidates are vying for 2 open seats. The candidates join us now for extended discussion. Jim Booth is a financial advisor running for an at-large seat. Candidate Elissa Hansen owns a consulting firm and a craft beer company with her husband. Noah Hobbs is a planner with the Arrowhead Economic Opportunity Agency. And Kriss Osbakken is a writer and an environmental activist. I want to say thank you very much to all 4 of you for being here tonight. Jim, let's start with you. Why are you running, and what do you bring as a candidate to the table?
Well, the reason I'm running is to have a choice. I thought we needed to have somebody who's fiscally conservative run, and I bring to the board several years of being on different boards. I was on the Housing and Redevelopment Board for 6 years. I was chairman of the board for 3 years. I was on the Charter Commission, Duluth Edison School Board, John Bear Grease Sled Dog Marathon Board. I've also coached several sports. So I've been in Duluth for about 30 years. So almost a lifetime resident from the time I graduated. So
sure. Elissa, why do you want to be a city councilor?
Well, I want to be a city councilor because I believe in Duluth and I believe we can grow together. My background, I have my master's in business administration and I've worked in economic development for about the last 10 years. I worked for the Area Partnership for Economic Expansion, APEX, here in Duluth, and prior to that for the Brainerd Lakes Area Development Corporation covering the Crow Wing County area. And so I've really seen how through that work that in Duluth, our city has the ability to grow its businesses, its policies, and its neighborhoods together. I think that's unique. I don't think every community has the ability to do that, and so I'm really excited to hopefully be part of that process.
And Noah, as a candidate, what do you bring to the table?
Well, I'm really excited about the future of Duluth. I think we've come a really long way in the past 8 years, so I'd like to continue on that momentum. I've worked shoulder to shoulder with neighbors, revitalizing my community club out in Merritt Park. On the boards of PAVSA, addressing real issues such as sex trafficking, CHUM. We have a high poverty rate that we have to address in this city. And also just in my day job, 9 to 5, building collaboratively with other entities for job training, education, pathways to success. And then also chairing and founding the River Corridor with, $50 million going into 19th Avenue West to Fond du Lac. I think we have to have a focus on maintaining those projects, especially with the turnover in administration.
Sure. And Kriss, why are you running for the at-large council?
I first decided to run because the library was on the table and the discussion of a new library was very serious. I feel that, I find that when I go door to door, people are still not happy with the schools having been raised and new buildings built. A lot of kids left the school district. People pulled their kids out. And so this was another instance where a building that's certainly suitable for use was being seriously considered to be forgotten and a new building built. And I thought, no, the people don't want that, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
Elissa, you mentioned that you have some experience in the area of economic development and you're a small business owner. If you could put together a strategic job growth plan for Duluth, what would it look like?
That's a big question.
Oh. It's a big job.
Yeah, it is a big job. Part of that definitely is the economic development that we can work on, and the city's department, the economic development team, and with DETA has been working in partnership with Apex and other organizations in our community. And I think that part of that strategic plan is really looking at what we're good at and what we're doing and growing at right now, which our aviation industry is one of those, along with some of our other industry areas, engineering, and continuing to look at what other companies fill in the gaps for that. North Force, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but is a collaboration of companies here in Duluth, nonprofits that are working to attract those already open jobs, the people for those jobs right now. I was one of the people that helped start that, get going. And so I feel like part of it is making sure that we have what people want to be in the outdoors and continue to invest in the trails, et cetera, but also making sure that we're helping to inspire and encourage those business owners and those entrepreneurs to continue to expand and invest in Duluth.
Mm-hmm. And I'd like to ask all of you the same question. Noah, your approach to economic development and what your plan for job growth would look like for Duluth.
So we've already identified in Duluth our primary economic drivers, and that's aviation. We've got healthcare, we have higher education, tourism, and to an extent, timber and mining. And I think it's our job now to focus on what are those secondary and tertiary markets. How do we, build off of aviation, higher education, all of that. And one thing I'd like to see is possibly working on research and development with our healthcare industry. I think the aviation is taking off, and we've seen the benefits of that. And upholsterers now been contracted to put the upholstery in for the jets at Cirrus, and I think we're going to see larger growth in those areas, and now identifying the second and the third markets of those economic engines.
Mm-hmm. Kriss?
We need to green Duluth. We need to draw jobs here that are alternative energy. We have a Enbridge passing its pipes past us through from the north and through native lands and passing them out through our port. That's wrong, and it's going to contribute to global warming. We need to be pressing Enbridge to bring their divisions of wind and solar here. Yeah, we have 40% poverty in this city. 40% people living low income, and 23% are poverty under the poverty level of $11,000 a year. So if we're going to bring these engineering jobs in, how is that going to affect almost half of the population? It's not. We need to be thinking of even a basic income guarantee, because I don't think we're going to find jobs that are going to support people in a dignified way, the bulk of the people.
Jim, what types of jobs or businesses do you think Duluth should be trying to grow or attract, and what would be your strategy to go after them?
Well, I agree that the industries that are growing right now are aviation, medical, and we as a city have to continue to work with Lake Superior College and Duluth Business College, UMD, Scholastica, to turn out product that can work in those fields. Because right now we do have job openings, but we don't have qualified people. And so working with the colleges, we can get qualified people to work in those industries. And as a city councilor, one of the things we can do is make it easier for businesses to get started in Duluth, because there's a lot of stuff, a lot of licensing and regulations that we could streamline. make it a little bit easier to start a business in Duluth.
Noah, we keep hearing that Duluth has a shortfall of affordable housing. If you're elected to the city council, how do you think the council can tackle that issue, and maybe specifically, how would you tackle that issue?
Yeah, I think there's two approaches. We have to add around 2,000 units of housing before 2024. I think part of that's new development, and along with that new development, we want to look at senior homes, single-family senior homes in neighborhoods that are already there, that they've devoted their entire lives to and they've raised their families in. That's the cheapest way for government on all levels. It's the cheapest way for a family to have a senior agent in their home. I think also we're seeing benefits of competitive market rate housing coming with the Kenwood Arrowhead project, London Road and 21st, and out in the Morgan Park School. That's going to help drop down competitively market rate prices by competition through that manner, and I think we're seeing that. And also we have to rehab. We have an old housing stock and we have a failing infrastructure. We can't keep building out. If we do, we're going to have to spend more on roads and sewer and water, and that's irresponsible. So we should have to increase our density, focus on rehabbing a fair amount, and continue with the development, and also focus on those senior homes, because that'll open up housing for first and second time home buyers. Sure. To allow the new families to move in here.
Kriss, you mentioned a moment ago something about low-income people, and you gave us some statistics on that. As a city councilwoman, how do you believe then that affordable housing could be made more affordable for low-income and others in the city?
Wow. Many of the people who are low income can only afford an efficiency or a one-bedroom, and some of these people have kids. So how can we make it more equitable? We've got to look at affordable housing and not just market rates. People are not making money here. We have 16,000 workers in the tourist industry, and they're making very little money, and they're swing shifts, and they're not full-time jobs. So how do these people we have 2,000 people who are homeless right now in Duluth. And I don't know, it's winter's coming. That's a horrible figure. So we've got to be thinking, apparently Center City Housing is looking at tiny houses, doing some tiny houses. We have the Steve O'Neill apartments. However, Chum says that they have not made a dent in the people coming in through their doors that are homeless. I just was at a meeting of the Landlords Association, and they said the city has such stringent codes, and the county, and these houses here, they're old, and they weren't built to code. And so one gentleman said he has an apartment, but it's 2 inches under code. He cannot rent it. So maybe we have to look at some of these codes and relax them, because the landlords were saying they have apartments. They cannot rent a lot of them.
All right, Kriss, thank you. Jim, how do you see the housing issue in Duluth?
Well, there's talking about two different types of housing, from what I understand here. We're talking about market rate housing, and we were all at a forum with the realtors last week or week before, and we found out that the houses between 150,000 to 250,000 are in great demand. And again, we would need to build facilities for the seniors, independent living centers, so that they could move out of their homes when they want to and open up that housing. Also, we'd have people who are in those homes, like myself, to sell them and move up to a bigger home. And so that whole inventory is hard to build. It's really difficult to build a house at that. So that's one issue we have. The other issue we have is low and moderate income housing. And so there's actually two different questions that are going on here. If you're addressing market rate housing, I think the best thing that we can do is work with the seniors and have independent living centers being built so that they can move up, have people who are first and second time home buyers moving up. But if you're talking about low and moderate income housing, there is some new housing getting built, and there's some plans for some other housing getting built now. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and Elissa?
Well, the Housing Redevelopment Authority has been making really good strides on the waiting list for that affordable housing, but it still is about 12 to 24 months, so I know that we can do better. And a couple of things that I know the next city council will probably need to be working on is the governor has some workforce housing funding that just has become available, and we haven't started to apply for that yet or figured out what might work well for Duluth. And also, the city is applying for $50 million in the National Disaster Resiliency Grant that is to go directly towards home ownership and energy. So those are some of the tools that we have right now that we could be using and going after to help with those problems.
Kriss, you mentioned that one of the reasons, or the main reason why you got into the race this year was because of the library, and there are some who believe that Duluth's downtown library is not energy efficient, that it no longer serves the community's needs for a library. What, if anything, do you think should be done with that facility and or libraries in general in the city?
Wow. First of all, the library should offer space to community groups where they don't charge $70 for half a day. Because Two Harbors does it, Grand Rapids does it, and the Twin Cities does it. And there's lots of space in that library. So, and the library is solid as a rock. Just walk in it and you know that. And apparently it's losing some energy because it has a cooling system that's antiquated, and maybe that needs to be looked at. I think the figure that was given, there was research done by John Ramos of the Reader, and the figure that was given by the consulting firm was on the very high side for renovation. That is one reason why I got in the race, but I'll tell you, when I started looking at the housing indicator report, I started looking at the comprehensive plan, the 5-year comprehensive plan. That's when I saw these figures about homelessness, about when I talked to people at Chum, talked to people at Community Action Duluth, that's when I saw these figures about the disparity in income in this city, and it's so that is more really why I am running now than regarding the library, because we're surrounded by these foreign corporations that just take. They don't care. Enbridge doesn't care what happens to the people. Sulfide miners, Polymet, Glencore doesn't care. Blandon just took the county for hundreds of millions of dollars. It's not Blandon, it's UPM Kiruna. It's Finnish corporation. So, yeah, that's really why I pursued running.
All right, Jim, the library will likely come up before the council. Where do you stand on what needs to be done with that facility and the library system?
In 2011, there was a levy that was passed by the people of Duluth for libraries and for the parks. With that money, we have to figure out if we can afford to bring the library up to standards for heating and cooling. If we can't do that, I would be in favor of looking at renting a space downtown. I don't think that we have to build. I don't think that the city should be a landlord. But my first thing would be if we can fiscally fix up that building, because it was only built in the 70s, it would be ridiculous not to keep it. But if we can fix it and so that it's energy efficient, then I would be in favor of that. If not, I would look at renting.
Mm-hmm. Elissa?
For me, I'm really happy that we took a step back and we're not moving forward with any of the options and trying to understand what are the true costs of either increasing its energy capabilities in that facility or looking at a new space. But just to make sure that we are remembering that that's just one of the branches, and that all of our branches in the city, to me, that's the first discussion, is making sure that we keep those accessible, potentially being able to expand the hours at those branches before we're investing again into downtown, really making sure that we're keeping that accessibility and that the community has a place to meet, because libraries are much more than just books. So.
Mm-hmm. No, I'll give you a shot at it too.
So a $35 million new library is certainly on the lower end of my list. I would like to see investments made into the current library. That would be, electrical outlets, maybe more computers, but I'd also like to have a conversation about how do we expand hours in the West Duluth library and also in the Kenwood library as well, and how do we increase services there and still make our downtown library efficient. It's on downtown, it's on the main bus line, and so I would like to see investments made into that to increase the efficiencies of it.
Streets. Everybody seems to be talking about streets in Duluth. Let's start with you, Jim. What should be done with Duluth City streets? How do we gain more dollars for streets?
Well, I have a plan, and the plan is really simple. We have a rainy day fund that's fully funded according to the state of Minnesota, but we keep adding money to it. So I take a part of that money and add it to the street fee, and then we also have a 1% sales tax, and I would take a part of that, 25% of that, which would be $4 million, and assign that to the street fund. And then we would have to do a 3 to 5% cut across the boards for all department heads, because you're taking a quarter of their money. So that would give you about an $8 million fund a year for streets. So that would be my plan.
Okay. And Elissa?
Sure. What I think the approach should be is definitely not cutting. I feel like we can't cut our public safety and security, and to do that plan we would have to cut. For me, it's really looking at how we continue to engage in relationships with our federal and state partners, our legislators, and I know that conversations have already started to try to figure out how we can kind of gain some more leverage on
Bring more state money in.
bringing more state and federal dollars in. St. Louis County also just passed this last year's sales tax, and so making sure that we're getting our equitable portion of that road repair fund,
Okay.
I think is a way that we could start to really tackle those. For us to really go after that in a very big approach, it's about $30 million per year for 30 years. So this is a marathon. This is not a sprint. This isn't something that we can solve in 1 year.
Noah, I'm sure you've been talking about this to yourself. How would you work to solve this?
So there's no magic pot of money. I don't think we can't raise taxes enough. Our citizens can't afford it to pay for the money that's needed to invest in all of our failing infrastructure. We can't make enough cuts to our services to provide core services of local government, and so I think we have to maintain conservative budgeting when it comes to our budgeting process. That's something that Mariness has done well. And then also I think smart sustainable planning. We have a problem where we have only 181 people per mile of road, whereas Minneapolis has 357. So we have to work on either attracting more people or reducing the amount of miles of roads that we have, and also increase efficiencies where we can in government. And certainly none of these are going to get us close to that $30 million. But I also think that you have an obligation as a candidate to say where you're going to make cuts in services to people.
Sure.
So is across the board, is it 3, 4, or 5% that you're going to cut from government?
All right, Kriss, we've got about 30, 35 seconds.
Okay. The elephant in the room is that the United States spends about half its taxes on the military. And if we can lobby, every city in the country should lobby, every state, that stops and the money comes to the people. We're in austerity here, just like Europe. It's no different.
All right, thank you very much. Jim Booth, thank you. Elissa Hansen, Noah Hobbs, Kriss Osbakken. Thank you all for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, let's dig into our news file archive for a look at what was making news 25 years ago this week.
For these National Guard members, it's no longer a one weekend a month commitment.
It was approximately 9:45 this morning and we received the word that we're activated for federal duty.
The 109th Light Equipment Maintenance Company is on its way to serve full-time active duty in Operation Desert Shield.
The stuff that goes overseas is painted a different color than ours. This is called a forest camouflage or woodland camouflage, and that's called a desert camouflage there, desert pattern. It's more sandy color.
There's a lot for these Guard members to do before they leave for the Middle East. There's equipment to be packed, gear to be loaded, and vehicles to be marked for easy identification. The 109th LEM company has been on alert for 2 weeks, trying to keep things in perspective, but now the sign says it all. It's Saudi duty time. The 109th LEM is a specialized high-priority unit. Its members will not serve on the front lines. They will be set up several hundred miles back, and equipment will be brought to them for repairs, everything from tents to computers. When the members of the 109th LEM head to Saudi Arabia for Operation Desert Shield, many things will be different, including the geography and the temperature. But the one thing that will be the same is this equipment and the training that they've had to learn how to use it. They say they're anxious to serve active duty. For Late Edition, Stacy Scheibel, KDLH News.
It's time to look at some of the week's top business stories from Business North. The Northwest Passage segment of Duluth Skywalk reopened Thursday following more than 3 months of remodeling. Linking downtown with the Duluth Entertainment Convention Center, the 39-year-old Skywalk was redesigned and refurbished to feature windows on each side to improve lighting. The Skywalk was funded as part of the DTA's Multimodal Center project. The late Congressman Jim Obistar originally tried to secure enough money to construct the DTA Center near the depot, but funds ran short and the center was moved closer to the Skywalk, allowing both projects to move forward at once.
2 companies with iron range ties played hardball this week over a taconite supply agreement. Cliffs Natural Resources announced Tuesday it had terminated its pellet supply agreement with SR Algoma in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. In response, SR Steel Algoma asked the court for an order restraining Cliffs from withholding supply. Cliffs contends SR has committed multiple and material breaches of the agreement. The current contract was to run until the year 2024. The pellets were originating from Cliffs' Upper Michigan mines.
A rock and roll star lobbied in Duluth this past Friday in support of a controversial voting method that has been adopted in Minneapolis and St. Paul. Nirvana co-founder Kriss, the national board chair of Fair Vote, said Duluthians should vote to adopt ranking choice voting. He claims it would lessen the impact of partisanship and polarization in local elections. The system allows voters to rank their first, second, and third choices, eliminating the need for primary elections. Local elected officials have expressed mixed opinions on the concept. For more on these and other stories, visit businessnorth.com.
If you have a comment on our show, call now, dial 218-788-2849 to leave a message or send an email to almanacnorth@wdse.org. And for the latest news and information from the station, visit the WDSE website where you'll find updates on your favorite shows and an interactive program schedule. And Denny, the forecast calls for a really warm weekend, especially on Sunday.
Oh, indeed. In fact, local forecasters are saying we could see 72 degrees. Unreal for October.
I might have to take my shorts out of the space bag under my bed.
I would be worried about it.
For Denny and the crew here at Almanac North, I'm Julie Zenner. We'll see you next week.